Jason will probably sit right here. I had to sit on that.
Yeah.
Second row, every time. Babe, does this remind you of somebody?
Huh?
Does this remind you of somebody? My granny mom?
Yeah.
Hey.
Always done this.
Right here and watch my dad. Slept in the slept in the chair.
She's my grandpa. That's just my grandpa.
Oh, you should have seen her. She was on her back. She was all right.
Here's Jason on the seat back, Joe.
She's right here.
Yeah, she's on the seat back.
Because hers right here. Because she technically said right Shut up. They always separate the
Thank you folks for stopping in. Y'all come back and see us anytime. Sydney, I have to tell you, I think you do the tour better than I ever have.
I think you're exaggerating a little, Arthur, but thank you.
No, I mean it. You've got all the facts right there clear in your head. And it's the way you talk about Frank. It's like you actually knew him.
Well, 3 months of practice has really helped. But I have to say, when I started here, all I wanted was to get through it. But now I really enjoy telling people about Frank. He really was quite a guy. And you're right. It really has started to feel like I know him. But what I like best is when we get to work together like we did with that last group. So I do all the set parts about Frank's life, and you put in the personal parts, like stories about coming here trick-or-treating when you were a kid. I think that's what makes the tour fun for most people.
You know, I think you're right. Morning, Mayor. Terry! Out for another driving lesson?
We are.
How's it going, Terry? Learned how to parallel park yet? It does? Well, I don't think I trust the car to park itself. When I was your age, we learned how to parallel park. And on a standard transmissions to boot.
Arthur, technology has made a few advances since you learned to drive.
Well, I don't like it.
Well, I would never have expected you to like it, Arthur. So how's business been?
Well, we've had one group in this morning. In fact, you just missed it.
Oh, too bad. Did you make sure they have their coffee coupons?
We offered them to them, but they were in a rush to get back on the road.
Arthur?
Now, we can't force people to drink coffee.
No, I guess not. But anyway, Arthur, I just dropped by to pick up a copy of the latest financial report for the museum. I must have misplaced mine.
Oh, sure. There must be some spare copies in the files. I'll go see if I can find them.
I'll go with you.
Mom, how long are you going to be?
Just a few minutes. Terry, hold your horses for 2 seconds and we'll get back to your driving. I promise.
Terry must be nice learning to drive in such a high-tech car.
It's alright. What did you learn to drive in?
I don't know. Whatever car my dad was driving back then. All I remember about it was how nervous my dad was all the time. He made me so nervous it made me mess up all the time. I remember once I missed a stop sign and he just told me to pull over and then he drove home. I didn't get another lesson for a month after that.
Just because you missed one stop sign?
Well, I have to admit, there was a car coming in the other way, and they had to slam on their brakes, and it made a really loud screech! And the guy looked pretty mad, too. Oh, I bet your mom's car would have warned you or something.
I don't know. Maybe. I want a Camaro when I get my license.
Good luck. All I could afford was a 10-year-old Toyota Corolla. And I'm still driving it 4 years later. Terry, stop playing with those. They're valuable.
What's the matter? This place is gonna close down anyway.
Oh, Terry, it is not.
Yes, it is. I think they're gonna tear it down or something.
Where did you hear that?
Mom was talking about it on the phone.
I don't believe it. And stop playing with those.
Well, it was sometime last week, I think.
Well, do you know when you'll be back?
Arthur, Terry just told me the museum is closing.
What?
She said they might even be tearing it down.
Mayor?
Terry,
What? What you said on the phone, Mom?
that was a private conversation. You should have been listening.
Mom, I was sitting in the car right next to you.
Well, you at least shouldn't have told anybody.
Sarah, what is this all about?
Now, Arthur, don't get upset. I was going to tell everybody at the next meeting.
About what?
We can get federal infrastructure money to make improvements to our town.
What improvements?
We can get money to improve the route from our clinic to the airstrip. And then we can put in a helipad at the airstrip, for emergencies.
We don't have a helicopter.
Well, of course we don't, Arthur. But if we have an emergency case at the clinic, we can get the patient to the helipad where they can be picked up by a helicopter and taken to the hospital.
Well, now, what does that have to do with the museum?
Arthur, you know as well as I do, the museum is on Main Street. That's the route. From the clinic downtown, it's a straight shot. 4 blocks to the highway, and then a mile and a half out to the airstrip. We can get money to completely redo the whole length of Main Street. We can get rid of that old brick street and put in a proper drainage system. And widen the street to a beautiful divided street that goes from the highway all the way to downtown.
And you want to tear down Frank's house to do that?
There's just no other way. Now look, Arthur, we're talking about $1.7 million here. This type of opportunity just doesn't come around very often. We can make some really positive changes to our town.
It just sounds like change for the sake of change to me. And I can tell you that I, for one, am against it.
I would expect nothing else, Arthur. Look, I'm going to call a public meeting of the town council and the museum board for next week. And we can have a full discussion of this issue. Now, Arthur, I just want to remind you that the museum has never brought in enough money to support itself. The city has been very generous in supporting this museum for many years. And that support just can't override the $1.7 million grant.
Does it always have to be about money?
Frankly, yes, it does. But now look, we can make space in the city hall for some of the exhibits of Frank's life. I'm sure we can find room for those 2 display cases. Terry, stop playing with those. Anyway, we'll have a meeting next week, and you can try to persuade everyone that this house is more important than a major renovation to the town.
I want the meeting held here, at the museum. Folks should at least see the thing they're deciding about.
Fine, Arthur. We'll have the museum here. Terry, put those down. Let's get
if she has the votes. And I'm guessing she'll have the votes.
But can't you convince him not to?
Well, I'll try. The mayor's right. That's a lot of money. And I'll be just some guy that they'll say wants to keep living in the past. Well, I better start going through the records to see if I can come up with some kind of argument at all.
I want to help too.
Well, all right, thanks. Well, let's go drag those boxes out.
Okay, looks like we're past time. I think we should get started.
Larry's not here yet.
Well, Arthur, I can't help that. We've got to start sometime. Now, I want to start by saying how much we've all appreciated the Frank Ferguson Memorial Museum for the last 30-some years. And all the work that Arthur Slater has put in for the almost decade of his presidency on the museum board.
Sorry I'm late. The dadgum train stopped on the tracks for 15 minutes. So, what did I miss?
Oh, nothing much. The mayor here was just telling us what a great place this is. Before she tells us she wants to tear it down. Oh,
Arthur, really?
oh, sorry, Mayor. I was just bringing Larry up to speed. Go ahead now.
Well, like I was saying, we all appreciate the museum, that we have an incredible opportunity here. We can get $1.7 million of federal infrastructure money to improve the route from the clinic to the airfield.
Wow.
Now, the most significant part of this project would be to widen and improve the 4 blocks of Main Street between the highway and downtown. Now, this would mean removing the old brick street and putting in a brand new divided street with trees all along the divider.
Well, so you're gonna take down all the brick, including downtown?
No, the 2 blocks of Main Street that make up downtown will remain brick. So we would retain the charm of the downtown. It would just be the 4 blocks leading to downtown that would be improved.
I beg pardon there, Mayor, but now will we be getting rid of them awful dips in the road?
Yeah.
Oh, the cross pans?
I beg pardon, Mayor, but now what the heck is a cross pan?
Well, that's what those drainage dips in the road are called.
Well, now, Mayor, why don't you just call them drainage dips?
That's what they are, but they're called cross pans.
Well, now, Mayor, I ain't never heard them called that. Have you ever heard of a cross pan?
Not that I can remember.
I haven't heard. Anyway, the answer is yes.
Now, beg pardon, Mayor, but the answer to exactly what?
Well, you asked whether we would get rid of the cross pans.
You mean the dips?
Yes, the dips.
Oh, I hate them things. We used to have a Buick, and if you went more than 15 miles an hour down Main Street, why, you would bang that front bumper, and sometimes the back one too.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we're removing them.
Well, now, Mayor, we don't have that Buick anymore. That must have been 20 years ago.
I remember that car. It sat so low to the ground, I'm surprised you could get down Main Street at all.
Yeah.
It was blue, wasn't it?
No, that was the Ford. It was black.
Oh, that's right. I remember now.
If we could just get back to the project.
So, Mayor, now, will we be getting rid of them dips?
Yes, we will get rid of the dips. We're going to put in a full drainage system that will eliminate the need for cross pans. I mean dips.
Well, good. I hate them things.
So, as I was saying, the 4-block section will be widened into a divided street with a storm drainage system and new street lights interspersed with trees that will run the length of the street divider. The road out to the airfield will be widened, and a helipad will be built in the airfield.
So, dear, when are we going to get to the museum?
I was just getting to that, Arthur. Now, when we widen Main Street, the first 3 blocks coming from the highway are no problem. There are road bridges on both sides of the street that will be removed to make way for the new street.
Mayor, you may pardon me. Well, now what the heck is a road verge?
Okay, that's what that strip of grass between the sidewalk and the street's called.
Well, now, Mayor, why don't you just call it a strip of grass between the sidewalk and the street?
It's just what they're called.
Well, I ain't never heard it called that. Have you ever heard of a road verge before?
No, not that I can remember.
It's just a name.
Well, why can't we just speak American? What do we need with road verges and cross hatches?
Cross hands.
Them too.
Okay, let's try this again. In the first 3 blocks, we take out the strips of grass between the sidewalks and the street to make enough room for the new street. Now, the trouble with this last block, that block does not have road verges. I mean grass strips. Most of the houses have a large enough setback from the road that won't be a problem. We'll have to cut into their lawns just a little bit.
But I don't understand. How are you gonna just come in and tear up part of somebody's front yard?
Yeah.
Eminent domain. What? This block is a blighted area if there ever was one. A few of the houses are still kept up pretty nice, but some of those old houses look like they're ready to fall in on themselves.
Yeah.
So, you can use eminent domain to make improvements, for the good of the city. In most places, we'll only lose about 5 feet of their lawns.
Okay, I guess that's not so much.
No, it's not. And all those property owners will be compensated at a fair price for their land. Now, there are 4 houses that are the problem. They don't have enough setback. 2 of them are derelict and can be condemned. One of them, and I'm sure you all know which one I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah, we know. Yeah.
Should have been condemned and torn down years ago, even though it's technically occupied.
Yeah.
Again, you can use eminent domain to get to those 3 houses. That brings us to the last house, Frank Ferguson Memorial Museum.
Well, there's nothing wrong with this house.
Except the roof.
Well, all houses need new roofs from time to time.
Well, the roof is not the point. The point is, the city already owns this place, and this house has no setback at all from Main Street. There's just that narrow little sidewalk between the side of the house and the street. I don't even understand why it was built this way. Every other house on the street faces towards Main Street. Now this thing, they just locked it down sideways, almost in the road, with the front porch and the yard facing out to 3rd Avenue. So, there's just no way around it. If this project is going to go forward, this place has to be torn down.
No.
Why don't you just come up with some other project that doesn't involve tearing down the museum?
Yeah.
Arthur, this is the only project we can get federal money for.
Who needs the federal government coming in here and telling us what to do with our town anyway?
The federal government is not telling us what to do.
You just said they're making us tear this place down.
Arthur, they are not making us tear down this museum. They're just giving us a lot of money that we can use to widen the street, which means the museum has to go.
See? There. is just what the museum does. It gets travelers to stop in.
Arthur, if we have to depend on the handful of people that this place pulls in, we're doomed.
It does better than some stupid divided street is going to.
Now, let's just all calm down. I think we can all agree that we're all trying to find the best way forward for our town.
Or some of us want the town stuck in the past.
Well, back in the past, this town used to be prosperous.
And Charlie used to drive a Buick. But we have to deal with how things are now.
Let's all just settle down.
I drive a Nissan now.
See? Folks used to drive American-made cars like Buicks. Now, everybody drives foreign cars.
Arthur, don't you drive a Kia?
Yeah.
Well, I don't see why your Kia is any better than Charlie's Nissan.
Well, it's not.
Well, then why are you complaining about my Nissan?
I wasn't. I was just saying that things were better when we all drove American-made cars.
Well, the mayor drives a Lincoln. It's made in America.
Yeah, Arthur. What about that?
I think we've gotten off course here. Now, Mayor, why don't you tell us why you think the new street would be good for our town? Then Arthur here can tell us why he thinks the museum is more important, or what kind of alternatives he has, so we can decide on a course of action.
All right. Well, granted, the official purpose of this project is an improvement of our medical emergency residence. But the real point is to open up the corridor between the highway and our downtown to make it inviting. And as I said before, we need to increase the traffic to deep downtown if the businesses are going to survive. It's really that simple. And second, we have a chance to inject $1.7 million into our economy. And that would be such a big boost to the construction companies in our area. I have copies of sketches and diagrams that will show what it will look like. We just have to do this.
Okay. Well said, Mayor. Okay, let's hear from Arthur.
Well, the mayor says we have to do this. But I say we don't have to. People are always saying we need change. But I don't see the point of change just for the sake of change. And there's no guarantee that new street will lure more folks off the highway. We know this museum does. And what's more, this place was donated to the city for the use of the purpose it's being used for right now. Not to be torn down to widen some road. I think we have a responsibility to Frank's daughters that donated this place to the city. What would they think if they knew we were tearing it down?
Oh, for goodness sakes, Arthur, they've got to be long dead by now. I think they'd be over 100 if they were still alive.
That's not the point. They donated this place to honor Frank's memory. And I think we should stick with it. And what about all those folks that you're going to be taking their property from, huh? I don't think all of them are going to be that happy about this whole thing.
No.
And why does it have to be Main Street? Why not Walnut? It's just one street over.
I can answer that.
Well, then come on back up here and tell us then.
Okay. First, it has to be Main Street, because that's the whole point of doing this, is to make an attractive corridor from the highway to downtown. And downtown is on Main Street. So it would make no sense to widen a street that doesn't take people to downtown. Second, the grant is to streamline the route from the clinic to the airfield. The clinic is downtown on Main Street, with a straight shot out to the airfield. How can we justify making an ambulance veer over a block and then veer back again? See, that would make no sense, and we never get the money. Thirdly, this could be a great boon to our community, so we're asking people to make a little sacrifice for the sake of the town. And remember, everybody will be fairly compensated. Some people will have to give up a little of their front yards, a few houses that should have been torn down anyway, torn down, and Frank Ferguson will just have to make a sacrifice too. Instead of a whole house dedicated to his memory, he'll have a nice little display. I just don't think it's too much to ask for people in the community to make a sacrifice for that community, particularly when they'll be fairly compensated.
Well, I don't like it.
Can I say a few words?
I think that would be a fine idea. After all, we ought to hear from the younger generation. They're the future of this town.
No. Snot little kid.
I have done a little research over the last week, and there are some special rules and considerations about the infrastructure grants when it comes to historic places.
Just because there's a memorial dedicated to some guy from the town in this place does not make it historic.
It's a museum. That makes it historic.
No, it doesn't.
Does do.
Does not.
Does do.
Hey, why don't you let Cindy continue?
Thank you, Larry. Well, now the mayor is right.
Told you.
Mayor, please.
He started it.
Did not.
Did not.
And I'm going to have to separate you two.
Go ahead, Cindy.
As I was saying, being a museum doesn't make this place historic. But after looking at some of the records with Arthur about this place, I did a bunch more research about the history of this building. Mayor, I can tell you why this place doesn't face Main Street.
Why?
Because Main Street didn't exist when this place was built. Frank Ferguson's great-grandfather, Moses Fraley, filed the claim on the land this house sits in 1841.
Well, wait a minute. How could that be his great-grandfather when they don't have the same last name?
Yeah.
Because was his great-grandfather on his mother's side?
Oh, okay, I see.
Anyway, it was a 160-acre-quarter section of land, and the town didn't exist then. Now, it's not clear the exact year this place was built, but it's clear why it was built here. What is now 3rd Avenue was once a stagecoach route.
Whoa!
This place was originally a stagecoach stop. That's why there was all the small bedrooms upstairs. It was for travelers to stay in.
I always thought it was just because, folks back then, had a big family.
Of course, the town really started to grow once the railroad went in 1855. That probably put this place out of business since the stagecoach stopped running then and the town grew up near the railroad. And those 160 acres were eventually broken up into house lots. But that makes this place a stagecoach hotel and probably the oldest building in town, which does make it eligible to be listed on the Registry of Historic Places.
Well, that would take years to do.
No, I've already filled out the forms and have all the documentation gathered and stored in the cloud. We just need the signatures of the board members, and I've contacted the people at the registry and found out that in special cases like this one, if all the documentation is clear, which it is, they can expedite the process and the museum can be on the registry in 2 to 3 months.
That's great.
Well, we're not going to stop this whole project just because this place turns out to be some stagecoach stop that nobody even knew about.
Oh, we sure are. You can't tear down a building on the Registry of Historic Places.
No.
Well, it's not on the registry yet, and I'm on the board, and I won't sign it.
You can't deny history! Cannot!
Mayor, I'm not talking about stopping the infrastructure project.
Whoa, what do you mean? I thought that was the point.
No, what I said was there are certain rules and considerations when it comes to historic structures. We can apply for additional money to preserve the museum.
But it would still be in the way of the road widening.
No, we can get the money to pick the whole building up and move it.
Well, move it where?
Right downtown. I did some checking and found the perfect place to put the museum. The vacant lot right next to the Main Street Cafe.
That would be perfect. Could we use eminent domain to get that lot?
We shouldn't need to,
Why not?
because I did some checking, and that lot is owned by Sarah Wilson, our mayor.
No! Is that right, Sarah?
Well, yes, but
Well, that's just wonderful.
And in addition to move the money to move the museum, we can get the money to purchase the property at a fair market price.
but I don't want to sell that property. I bought it as an investment for when the downtown comes back.
Well, you know, a very wise person once said, just a few moments ago, I don't think it's too much to ask for people in a community to make a sacrifice for that community, particularly when they'll be fairly compensated.
Yep, that is just what she said all
Yeah, it sure was.
But that property could double in value after the infrastructure project.
Well, now, that's what I would call a real catch-22. That property just might go up after the infrastructure project. But that infrastructure project just might not happen unless you agree to sell that property. Now just think. You're always complaining that people don't use their coffee coupons to come downtown after they visit the museum. Well, moving the museum right downtown next to the cafe would certainly solve that problem.
Yeah.
And remember, Sarah, you're up for re-election next year. You know, I think that making a sacrifice for the town might look real good in your re-election campaign.
Yeah?
Oh, all right. We can use that lot.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Wonderful. Now, how about you, Arthur? Does this plan meet with your approval?
I don't know. It seems like this place is a historic spot, since this is where the stagecoach stop was. No, I think it should stay right here where it's always been. No.
Well, what a big surprise. Arthur doesn't want any change at all.
And you want to change everything.
Do not.
Do. Let's not start this again. Now, Arthur, let's not lose sight of what we're trying to do here. The point is to save the museum.
Yeah.
And this plan would save the museum. Now, the one thing you have to admit that Sarah was right about is that this neighborhood where the museum sits really has gone downhill. Just think of how much better the museum will look tucked in with all the shops downtown. And Arthur, I think Frank would really love this idea.
All right. I guess it's all right. I'll agree to it. Yes.
Wonderful. I really think this will work. Thank you so much, Sydney. You saved the museum. But now I have to ask, Sydney, how'd you do all this in less than a week? You must have been run ragged.
Oh, no, not really. I did almost all of it on my phone.
Well, I never thought I'd say this, but thank the Lord for smartphones.
late again. I just don't believe it. Young people, they have no sense of responsibility. When I was their age, we knew how to be on time. But this new generation, I don't know what this world is coming to. Well, it's about time. Oh, Sydney! Oh, good morning.
Good morning, Arthur. About time I was.
Oh, I thought you were that dang girl. She's late again.
I know. I saw Terry running down the street as I was coming in. She should be here any minute.
Well, she wouldn't have to run if she hadn't gotten her license suspended for flying through town in that hot rod bird.
If she hadn't got caught doing that, she wouldn't be coming here at all.
I still can't believe the mayor's own daughter got caught by the speed trap.
You mean the Traffic Safety Enhancement Program.
Sure. Yeah, that's what she calls it. You know that was her 5th ticket that she's gotten since she got her license just a couple of years ago.
Well, I'm sure a little time working here will straighten her right out.
I don't know. I just don't know about these kids these days.
Arthur, you said the same thing about me when I started working here 3 years ago.
Sorry I'm late, Mr. Slater.
What's the excuse this time, Terry?
I just lost track of time, but I ran all the way here.
Yeah, so I heard from Sydney.
Morning, Terry.
Morning, Sydney.
Terry, I wish that you could be as responsible as Sydney was when she worked here.
Now, Arthur.
Well, it's true. But say, you promised to bring the baby by for a visit. So where is little Frank?
Oh, I was going to bring him with me, but he woke up with a little bit of a fever this morning, so I left him home with Jimmy.
Well, I sure am sorry to hear that.
Oh, no, don't worry. It's just a little cold. He'll probably be fine by tomorrow.
Terry, did you know that Sydney's son is named after Frank Ferguson?
Why you do that?
Well, now, as it turns out, the first morning I was supposed to work here, the battery in my car was dead. And I called Jimmy Simpson in a panic to come jump and start my car because I was late on my first date. Well, we started dating after that and got married, I guess, about a year later. So, you see, it was because of the Frank Ferguson Memorial Museum that Jimmy and me got together, and that led to our son being born 3 months ago. Plus, after doing the tour so many times, I almost felt like I knew Frank Ferguson. Like he's almost an old friend. So it felt right naming our son after him.
So, you were late on your first day working here?
Yeah, well, yes, but she had a good excuse.
Now, Arthur, if I remember correctly, you didn't think it was such a good excuse back then.
Well, you know, it was just that one time.
Now, Arthur.
All right. I guess you had some issues. But now that you're here, Terry, how about taking some coupons next door and getting us all some coffee?
All right. Oh, none for me. I just stopped in on my way to the market. I need to get back home to relieve Jimmy. He was pretty nervous about watching Frank with a fever.
That'll just be 2 coffees, Terry.
All right, I'll be back.
Oh, yeah, she'll be back after she finishes a cinnamon roll or 2. Since she's been working here, I think she's eaten up most of her uncle's profits. But I've got to say, it sure is nice having the cafe right next door. You know, when things are slow, I can slip next door and have a quick bite, while keeping an eye on the museum. But lately, it's been so busy that I go hungry some days.
So business has been good.
Oh, it sure has. We're averaging nearly twice as many people as before the move. I have to admit, moving the house and opening up the street, well, that really has worked out, even with being shut down for over a year.
Well, I'm so glad it all worked out.
Well, me too. I'm really glad that it worked out. And, oh my heavens!
Hello, Arthur. And I'm sorry, I can't remember your name.
Sydney. Oh, I remember you two. You were the first people I ever did the tour for.
That's right, I remember. You were late, and Arthur wouldn't do the tour until you found me.
Honey, we were just talking about that day a minute ago.
So, you still work here?
No, I just stopped in to say hi.
Cindy's married now, with a new baby at home.
Oh, that's wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So what brings you folks in today? I have to admit, we don't get many repeat visitors.
Well, we were just passing through, and we saw that new street. We thought we'd see, well, what other changes have been made to the town.
That divided street is beautiful. It really makes the town look so much better. I love the way it just seems to pull you right off the highway to downtown.
And of course, we were a little surprised to see the museum was gone, but there it was, right downtown. That must have been quite a project.
Oh, it was. And it was all Sydney's idea.
It was?
Sure was. When they started talking about widening the street, they wanted to just tear down the museum. But Sydney came up with a plan to move it down here.
Well, good for you, Cindy.
Yep. Turns out that day, Sydney mowed down that sign, went for the museum, was one of the luckiest days ever for this old place.
She did what?
Oh, I did a stupid thing. I was drinking and I ran off the road into a sign for the museum out on the highway. As part of my plea deal, I served community service here at the museum.
Ah, so that was it, Arthur. I remember we guessed that you were doing community service, but Arthur wouldn't tell us what you'd done.
Well, like I've always said, we all do some dumb things sometimes when we were young. But I honestly think that the world is in pretty good hands with this new generation.
Arthur, I have never heard you say anything like that before. But thank you.
Oh, if I could get you folks to move back just a little bit. Yeah, back, there you go.
Oh, Halloween is coming up.
Yep, and Joe never has gotten that trigger to work right.
Well, it's nice to know that some things never change.
Well, folks, that's our little play. So let me introduce my cast to you. As my sidekick and best buddy on stage, Pat Sandy Smith. As one half of the tourist couple, Jean Gray Gellis. The more attractive and smarter half of that couple, Doris Sharon Paris. And the most reasonable man in town, Larry Milliken, Bob Robinson. And as the rising star of the Lyric Live Theater, Terry Wilson, is Ariana Brandt. Either side of the Pecos, Sarah Wilson, Lisa Story. And as that man stuck firmly in the past, Arthur Slater, Dean Smith. And the savior
property.